Okay, I found my spot here over at the Lawrence Cabin in Havertown, and I walked around for about 15-20 minutes exploring different spots to paint, different views, and I decided that for today this one really seemed to grab my artistic attention. There's the Lawrence Cabin behind there, and then the house that's connected to it. So I'm going to set up my palette and get started blocking my painting in. Okay, so I've got my canvas out and broke out my paints, and I'm working with a disposable palette because it's much easier for cleanup. And so the basic colors I have on my palette are cobalt blue, pastel violet, Hansa yellow, radiant white, that's a gambling color, cinnabar green, this is a olive green, this is a Williamsburg, then a little phthalo green, then I have a permanent green, naphthol scarlet, Mars deep yellow, and then a raw umber. And I keep all my my paints that I pull out, I keep them stored back here for quick access in case I need them while I'm painting. So the next step will be to block the painting in as fast as possible. And so that will be my next step. Sometimes I'll look through my camera, or I'll even use the Plein Air Painter app on my cell phone, their value viewer, which is actually a very good little application, great application to have. So you could go take a picture of the scene, and then you can use the photo and it allows you to go through and turn it into a grayscale, go into the levels. So it's a good little tool to help you start out with your composition, or you could take a few minutes and sketch a composition. I tend to like to just go straight ahead and just start blocking it in. I might look at this for a second or two and get an idea for, basically what I'm looking for is interesting shapes, and that's what attracted me initially to this scene, was the interesting shapes and the light pattern. I'm also aware of the fact that right now it was very sunny when we showed up, and now it's starting to get a little cloudy. So it's going to be a little partly cloudy, and we're right about solar noon. So the shadows are going to start to shift in the next couple hours a little bit more, since the sun is almost directly overhead, because I got a little bit later of a start today than I wanted, so I'm also aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and just start blocking away. What I try to find, to me, what I find that's interesting is finding angles and counter angles. So if I have something going this way, you know, I want something going this way or that way, and I find that, to me, that's what's going to make this scene dynamic. So I just start out trying to block in real big shapes. As big a shape as possible. Thinking about how I'm dividing or designing my space. And this is just going to be a series of corrections the whole time. Constantly going back and making little corrections. So I'm looking for the biggest shapes. I'm trying to divide this painting from the very beginning into the simplest shapes, as if I had a pair of scissors and I was trying to cut these shapes out. And again, I'm aware that some of these shapes that I'm using are shadow shapes, and some of those shadows are going to start to travel. But I can go and block these shapes in any way, and again, for me, part of the challenge and the joy, and also the frustration of doing planar painting is the challenges of dealing with the fact that this is nature streaming live right before your eyes, and you have to be willing sometimes to make very drastic changes to what you're doing. So I'm basically just using a little of the raw umber, a little bit of my liquid fine detail, which is my medium, and just a tad bit of terps, just so I can start. And the nice thing about the liquid is that it helps stuff tack up quickly. So again, I'm just looking at the shapes, closing one eye and closing my left eye and blurring my right eye, just to help me find the shapes that I want to play with. And I'm trying to, again, just keep it loose and look for what's going to make an interesting shape. Because basically a painting is just a series of choices of shapes. I can't paint every leaf, you know. That's the thing about painting nature. You can't paint everything. You can only paint an impression of nature. And that really comes down, for me, about finding these shapes. These interesting shapes. So I try to keep it kind of dry so that this will set up really quick and I can start painting over the shapes. Or into the shapes. Sometimes you just slow down, stop. I find that it's a very important thing is to, especially in the beginning stages, is to look as much, if not more, than you paint. Some people just start rushing. And you start rushing and you'll start making mistakes. So I think it's really important. Go back and you start making changes, you start making decisions, start thinking about, think before you paint. And again, if you mess something up, it's pretty easy to go back and work over it, work into it, work through it. In this area down here, I know that the shadows are going to change quite a bit. The light's going to change. Probably by the time I'm towards the end of my painting, things are going to start to shift. And the light will shift. So being aware of that from the beginning, I can sort of maybe plan and take that into account. I also like to pay attention to the edges of my painting. You want every part of the painting to be contributing to the whole. And it's really easy sometimes to just sort of focus on the center of your painting and not the edges of your painting. It's one of the things I really learned from looking at artists like Diebenkorn. Every area of his paintings, even his, most abstract paintings, the edges were always very interesting. So I always try to make the edges. And again, the other thing that you have is the freedom to move and alter things. So if a tree limb is in your way, makes the composition bad, move it or take it out. If moving it over 6 inches or 2 feet make a better painting, move it. Just trying to find the angle. So right now I sort of have this basic composition laid in, and I can start massing my colors in. I'm thinking later on one of the key things to make this painting really interesting will be what happens here in the foreground. There's a tree here. So again, that's another little thing another element that I can play with as far as the composition. Okay. Stage 1, my blocking is done, and now I'll start to play around with massing in the colors. The quicker I can mass the colors in, the faster I can do that, mass everything in, the sooner I can see how the entire painting is going to look. And then I can start making adjustments from there. I can't really tell how bright something is unless I can see how dark something is, so I have to get this